Brian, thank you so much for joining us and joining me today for this conversation. The impetus for this conversation is really that I spoke recently with a restaurant owner who's been in business for decades in the Richmond, Virginia area. And in our conversation, we were talking about the fact that not only do some business owners not necessarily know the next right steps to take in reopening, but there's a lot of concern out there that potential patrons, restaurant goers, and the like themselves may not know what steps local businesses are taking to keep their clientele safe. So to that end, I know that Chamber RVA has created a program and coordinated a coalition of businesses called Forward RBA. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about Forward RBA, why building this coalition is important, and what people need to know about it.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Spanberger, for one, having these sessions and doing what you do so well with your constituent services and helping our district and the greater Richmond area. So this has been a conversation for weeks now, really going back to the earliest days of the pandemic when the governor of the Commonwealth put in closure measures like many other states and jurisdictions did. And so a group led by Leonard Sledge, who's the City Economic Development Director for City of Richmond, began convening regional leaders to talk about the issues. And we initially, like a lot of people, were just trying to understand what was happening, but then also deal with where we could try to take resources, whether it be human resources, financial resources, and or just leadership resources to try to help through the issues. And I guess it was probably toward the middle of that, we said, we are going to reopen at some point. Thankfully, our medical institutions and hospitals, along with other first responders and all those that take care of us, had gotten through the worst of it. And since they felt that they were okay as far as hospital utilization, we saw PPE reach a certain area that people were comfortable. We could take care of first responders and our medical partners. So we said, okay, when we open, let's make sure we're as ready as possible. And so we began over 3 or 4 weeks of putting together what that would look like. And to your point, we said, it's got to be a couple of things have to guide this. First, there has to safety and responsible reopening has to be the guiding principles. And then within that, both the employer, whether it be a restaurant owner or a small retail or doctor's office, has to take care of their employees first. And then secondly, think about their patrons or customers. And so as we thought through those dynamics, we said, there's a lot of information coming from the CDC, a lot of information coming from industry sector partners like the Virginia Hospitality Association, Virginia Restaurant Association. We said, let's create a place that everybody can go to for resources. So that was sort of and so we came up with that, put it on our website, Chamber RVA, but we shared it across 40 organizations that regardless of whose website you went to, you got consistent information. We felt with and you've seen it, there's so much information, we tried to make it as clean and as consistent as possible. So that was already there. We said, now let's going to go a step further. When people start to reopen, it's not a matter of just saying, hey, it's on the website, go print off a copy. How do we proactively do something? And that's where Forward RBA came to be. We created this very robust website separate from Chamber RBA, directed people through it through the media and social media and other mediums. But we said, again, even with the information sitting there in a digital format, we called it the digital toolkit, we needed to also get businesses engaged. We created this sign-in or registration portal. We set up distribution days, the last, actually the 27th, 28th of May. We had, we didn't know what to expect. There were 40,000 businesses in the region. So we said, let's try to take care of 10%, assuming that 25 employees or less is a good number to start with. And we created a physical toolkit that included basic PPE. It included marketing material to say, not only am I opening, I'm opening in a safe and responsible way. And then third, it gave them printed material around reopening guidelines. So between digital and physical, we wanted to give that business owner some confidence that they could reopen safely, but then also the ability to project to their employees and to their consumers through this signage that they had done those measures. So that's sort of a long answer, but that's really where Forward RBA, not owned by the chamber or any other chamber, it's 40 organizations came together and said, Let's make this truly open to everybody who can benefit from it.
And so for those small businesses who joined in with Forward RBA, can you talk a little bit about what businesses are doing to protect their workers and what they're doing to protect their clientele?
I think go back to the earliest days, what gives me confidence as a business leader. And you saw Kroger, Publix, Wegmans, a lot of places that were essential businesses that we all need to go to. We went from all of us staying away from people, some wore masks, some didn't, to now you've got plexiglass barriers, you've got signage on the floor, you've got every employee wearing a face mask, you've got customers now wearing face masks. So I think we've done what businesses typically do. We've said we can't just meet the letter of the law, we've got to meet the spirit. And so businesses have gone above. A Walgreens, a CVS, taped down the aisles of making sure that, and again, we're all adults, but we still, that physical reminder made us all think differently, which I think was important. Secondly, you've seen them post signage that says what they're doing about protecting their employees and asking us as customers and patrons to do as well. I've been in restaurants since the outdoor seating was allowed. I have not been inside of a restaurant yet, but I've also seen, again, businesses going above and beyond that have signage. There's some restaurants went completely to online ordering. So even if I'm sitting on their patio, I hit a QR code, my food comes, I and my spouse can enjoy it without a mask, but all the employees have a mask. There's hand sanitizer. So I'm really proud that businesses and consumers, I think, have taken this seriously and have gone above and beyond what we're asked to do to instill confidence.
So you talked to that point about instilling confidence, and I'm curious if you have, from the work that you've done with Forward RBA and the businesses that you've worked with, what are some of the steps that business owners can take so that, you mentioned the signage in the aisles and use of plexiglass. Some of it's a lot more obvious to a consumer that action's been taken. But I'm curious, what are some ways that business owners can communicate and explain to potential clientele or potential business goers or patrons that they've been really working to keep their employees safe and, of course, their patrons safe?
I think it's those outward, overt measures are important because you don't know what they say behind closed doors, what they've told their employees. But, when I've gone to get my hair cut since we had some reopening and seen, a young employee take my temperature, ask me to use sanitizer, to wear my mask, I know that tells me that the business owner has trained their employees around the importance of these things. And then the employees are adopting those measures. When I go into a place and see the customers also, for the most part, doing that. You go into a nursery to buy flowers and people are standing 6 feet apart. You catch people kind of moving toward each other and going, now I'm going to stop that yield to let you go forward. So I think business owners, one, have been asking and going out and getting the information they need, whether it be from Forward RBA or their own industry sector partners. They've sought out and they have the guidelines. They've learned them. They're also now putting those practices into place. Like you said, I was thinking the other day somewhere I was at and I saw the plexiglass barrier, how much businesses have spent and how much they've invested in these measures. They may not be needed next month or a year from now, but the business owner said, I don't care. I need to take care of my employees, take care of my customers, and although I've had a significant loss of revenue, I'm going to do the next step to make it possible. So communication, understanding what they need to do, going above that, and then projecting that information and that those overt measures that they've taken it seriously and they do care about their customers and their employees, I think have been the things they've done.
And what are some of the measures you've heard, particularly in the restaurant industry? We have so many restaurants throughout Central Virginia, and a lot of people are concerned about, or not even concerned, a little bit of hesitation about returning to normalcy. What are some of the conversations that you've been a part of with restaurant owners about the precautions that so many restaurant owners are taking in order to keep both their employees and their patrons safe?
Well, I don't want to, and my exuberance of being excited the businesses are starting to reopen, and we're seeing the economy open up too. I do want to pause a minute and say that every business has not opened. There is different opinions across even our region as to, Richmond was delayed in both phases, and that's both the action of the mayor and the governor, but also their prerogative to think about their constituencies, their citizens, and doing what they think is best. So we have never questioned when these things happen. We've certainly said as we reopen, how do we make sure we educate properly and make things happen. So,
and that's a good point, Brian, as well. And I think regionally, representing the 7th district, we wrap around Richmond City, but particularly for folks in Henrico and Chesterfield and neighboring counties, there is so much overlap between the city and the suburbs just surrounding. So, I hope that when the city's ready to reopen, that they'll be able to follow suit and perhaps use some of the good learning lessons that we've had in neighboring counties as they begin to reopen.
Well, we had 2 distribution sites within the distribution of the kits back at the end of May, even in Richmond. And so we did have, I'd say, out of the 2,000 that businesses that showed up, I want to guess somewhere between 300 and 400 were Richmond based. And so they're also just doing what they've got to do, prepare and to be ready for whatever they're going to do. So again, it's not our job to question our leaders. It's to follow what they made good analysis and decide what to do. Restaurants are doing the same thing. So I think I think it's this Friday, tomorrow, that Richmond moves into phase 2. There will still be restaurants who are not open. And whether that's because they need another week to prepare, whether it's they're not comfortable, they need to rehire employees. There's all types of reasons. But the point is, as they reopen, we want to make sure they've got the material they need, they've got the confidence they need, and again, that they'll do it correctly. What none of us want as a business leader is to go into a place and not see social distancing, not see employees following the guidelines. Because one, as a customer, I'm going to be concerned and probably not want to stay there or go back. But secondly, bad behavior by one is bad behavior by all. So we've been very deliberate. And I say we, I'm talking about 40 entities, a lot of leaders across this region saying, listen, we're all ready to get back to life as normal, whatever that means. We're ready to not be worried about getting sick from a virus. But at the same time, as we do these things, let's do it right. Let's do it safely. Let's do it responsibly.
And Forward RBA is, you mentioned a variety of different entities that are leading this effort, but that really spans throughout all of Central Virginia, through multiple counties, including the city of Richmond as well. So I would just note that your work does cover so many of the counties that falls within the 7th district.
Yeah, officially, Chamber RVA works with 9 jurisdictions. But for this effort, we thought it was so important that if you look at the Gateway region, just south of us with Petersburg and all the way down even further south, we felt important that we've got resources up here that a smaller region like they are do not have. So we very quickly reached out to the Gateway region PDC and said, hey, would y'all like to be a part of this? Can we help you? If you don't, that's fine, because they were starting to develop their own reopening guidelines. And we talked to Keith Boswell and said, Keith, we're happy just to make this, add 5 more counties or cities. I see we added about 8, I think. And so we advertised it throughout all of those jurisdictions. We made it available and even had 2 of the distribution points service even further south. So we tried to be as inclusive as possible, to be as open to all small businesses, 25 employees or less. We really wanted to make sure this was a broad message, not just from helping them reopen safely, but we also, part of the marketing was, our vision was, if you drive around where you live or you work and you start to see these teal blue signs, it would also give us all sort of this built-in sense of confidence. But you know what? We can go out to eat. We can go to the retail store and get what we weren't getting 8 weeks ago. So, and I've been proud to see some of these signs out there. Yard signs, you're familiar with, the old political yard sign.
I do love a good yard sign, Brian.
They're good yard signs. And we said, those probably won't be as needed by as many, so we'll make less. Those went like hotcakes. Yeah. So we ran out of those quick, and we were trying to decide whether to buy some more or get some more. But the bottom line is the program worked, businesses got what they needed. And I tell you, I've been really thankful because, you do the work we do. You don't always get a lot of comments other than when they're bad. We've had a lot of people, both businesses write us saying, hey, thank you for helping us do this. But I was at one of the distribution sites, the mall down in Chester. I think it's Chester, forgive me, I'm still learning the jurisdictions. And customers who were coming into the mall stopped by and said, what are y'all doing? And we told them, and they said, wow, thank you for doing that. And so it was nice to see that there was, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now that they're not our ideal, and we've got some tough conversations going on, but it was nice to be able to help businesses do what they want to do. I mean, we didn't give them PPE to last them more than 3 or 4 days, but it was a nice shot in the arm to say, face masks are available, sanitizers available, and gloves, do the right thing.
Well, and I think as a consumer, as a potential restaurant goer, as a patron, knowing that businesses are taking extra precautions, knowing that businesses are, and particularly restaurants, are really focused on customer safety, employee safety, and you don't always know what questions to ask. So I think having that visible, the yard sign or the sign in the window, and understanding the intentionality that businesses are taking on in trying to keep us safe will help a lot, because reopening is certainly one thing, but we need to, as we're reopening, ensure that we are also helping with consumer their sense of security in re-entering the economy as well. And that sense of security comes from knowing that businesses are taking the right steps and doing the right thing, and certainly being able to know what those steps are and that they're following the best guidance is incredibly important.
And we've also been fortunate, I think, to your point, some places kind of reopen without so much of an emphasis on this, and that's their decision. Yep. Other locations, I'll say. We were very deliberate. I think Governor Northam and others have been very intentional about how we're doing things. So I think as all of us have gone through this learning, this dissemination of information, this doing things kind of by the book and in an orderly manner, what's been comforting also is to go to these locations, see people beginning to re-engage, but also not see our numbers change. Now, we don't know how long that's going to last or change. We're doing things with sports now and eventually opening schools. We can't predict what we don't know, but at least through the first 3 weeks or so, as we've left our homes, it's nice to know we haven't seen this drastic or this unexpected or certainly an undesired spike in cases, more hospitalizations. Matter of fact, I think hospitalizations continue to come down even in a reopening. So that's what we all want. Yep. And if that continues, then we get the best of both worlds, controlling the virus while we also re-engage the economy.
Now, and you mentioned that some businesses haven't yet reopened, and certainly our neighbors in Richmond City are on their way for those who are choosing to open when they enter the next phase. What steps could businesses that aren't yet open be taking now in preparing for to open?
Well, again, exactly what we should be talking about. And the good news, again, is that there are learnings from other places, whether you go to Georgia, Florida, or whatever. But here, just locally, to your point, we've had a region that has embraced opening outside, restaurants getting very creative and putting up tents in the parking lot. So I think if you're in Richmond or any place else and you haven't opened, there's plenty of people, including your industry sector leaders like the Restaurant Association, that you can talk to and say, what are the learnings? What did did your kitchen operation change drastically? How did you protect your kitchen workers? It's one thing to put masks on your waitresses, hostesses, and people out in the restaurant going out to the patio, but how do you prepare the food in the way that you do and keep social distancing, or at least as much as possible? So I think the good news is there's been a lot of success. There's been a lot of, I heard, I think it was early this week, somebody said this past Saturday night, their restaurant actually had the best night it had had, not just before COVID, but ever. And so
wow.
I'm open for 6 months or 6 years, but the point was they had a really good night. And that's good because we've got to get business confidence now too, not just health conscious, but business confidence. So I think if I was a business owner in Richmond or otherwise, I'd be calling my neighbors, my friends, saying, hey, how did you deal with this? Certainly, my wife and I have been a couple of places in the last 2 weeks that they've run out of things on the menu. And that's to be expected too, in the sense that you might have a normal way of projecting your needs, but this isn't normal. And so I think they're probably being conservative in their orders. And if they used to order 50 of X, they might have ordered 30. And so also I say that to remind us as customers, we got to be patient too. I think I saw somebody put up a message that says, if you go to a restaurant in these times and it's not perfect, don't go write a bad review. Yeah. Maybe tell the manager if you need to, or decide if you don't want to go back there. But don't put a business underwater when they're doing the best they can in extremely difficult times. We consumers need to do better.
And you make a good point, Brian. As businesses, and particularly those that are dealing with inventory issues and their kind of point-in-time purchase needs, it's incredibly important that we be patient, particularly with restaurants. And I think it's probably a measure of success, and that we're on our way back towards a little bit of a normal economic standing. If we do visit restaurants and they run out of the items that they might typically serve, that means that they're doing better than they anticipated, which for our local economy is certainly a good thing. Now, since the start of the pandemic, you and I have spoken a few times on conference calls with some small businesses about the difficulties that they're facing and some of the federal programs that were created to help them, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. And so I'm just curious if you could comment on, from your experience with Chamber RVA and your work in helping businesses through the process of reopening, are there any additional types of support that you think the federal government could be providing or would be useful from a federal perspective, things you want to make sure I'm aware of as you continue to advocate for our small businesses across Central Virginia?
Let me take 1 minute, to thank you for what you've already done. I think you all also, even as Congress men and women, didn't have a playbook for how to deal with this either, and so you did what you normally do, tried to react and pass legislation to do what is necessary. Some parts were well received and did well, others maybe not so much. But that's very difficult. There's rarely a federal program that can meet all needs. But I think overall, the support you all did pass has made a difference. I do not believe we'd be in the shape we're in today had you not taken the measures you did. And then you didn't just do it once. You came back, you listened, and you thought about through the CARES Act 2 and other parts how you could get a little better, more targeted. So all of those have been appreciated. SBA took a lot of heat for a lot of reasons. Sometimes that's earned, sometimes it's not. But I think, again, overall, they did a yeoman's job of trying to do their job in a very difficult time. Our banking partners have been phenomenal in taking part of that infrastructure, or a big chunk of that infrastructure need, and filling it and doing the job our small businesses needed. And now you're continuing to look at ways you can make some changes. So to your point, I think you've done a lot to help us be where we are. I've seen a number of letters I'm getting asking us to weigh in to send to your office, and we're looking at those. Everything from making loans below $150,000, 100% forgivable with minimal documentation. I could see that point of view, because really you can eat up a lot of money and time in trying
on the administrative side, yeah.
Yeah, so the point was, but y'all have to decide that. SBA's got some, let's just find some places we can make it more flexible. And again, y'all just passed some legislation.
We did.
So keep doing that, keep looking at it. If you decide it's $150,000 forgivable, great. But I think it's the flexibility in any way you can, because again, they're trying to get back to business. None of the PPP loans I've heard about are going to make anybody rich, meaning they barely made some places able to stay operable. So keep doing that, what you're doing, and listening to small businesses, listening to our financial institutions who made it happen. If there's tweaks you can make, let's do those through regulation or SBA procedures. Another that you might could think about, and I'm certainly excited or happy when people get what they deserve. I do think the unemployment revisions got to be made. If we want people to go back to work, I think I saw that y'all are at least thinking about, capping unemployment to what your previous wages were. I mean, I'm happy some people got more money out of this situation than not. I think that made them better consumers, or maybe they saved a little money to be consumers. But it is making it difficult for employers to bring some people back. And secondly, it's making employers be the bad guy. And neither of those are optimum. So if y'all could revisit that, really listen to businesses and to listen to people who are affected and try to come to the right compromise on that. But outside of that, I think the fact that PPE phase 2 was not completely exhausted means that maybe things are okay. And maybe if the flexibility y'all have now shown might cause a few more applications to come in, or EIDL programs might be more fully funded. But so far, I think I don't get a lot of calls saying, please call the Congresswoman and do this. They're simply trying to take what's already available and apply it to their operation.
Thank you, Brian. And I appreciate that feedback, and I appreciate your consistent engagement. You and representatives from other chambers of commerce across Central Virginia and some of the business leaders and owners across Virginia have really been the ones that have helped through their stories, their experiences, their advice, been some of the ones helping me really determine and navigate some of the response that we needed at a federal level. You mentioned briefly, we just passed a new piece of legislation that was to provide more flexibility to PPP. You know, when we first passed the bill that created the PPP program, I got a phone call from a business owner in one of our counties, and how there wasn't enough flexibility in his type of business. And just understanding the actual nuts and bolts of how his business functions, allowed me to really be an advocate for loosening the PPP restrictions for forgivable parameters. And so ultimately we did pass legislation that ensured that there was a lot more flexibility in how those dollars are spent, supporting employees, bringing people back to the workforce, but also recognizing that all businesses are different, and overhead costs and the costs to keep the lights on and keep the building are also expenses that need to get paid, and a little bit more flexibility because not all businesses have the same breakdown was really important. So I'm proud of that. Well, Brian, I'm so grateful for your time today, and I would love if we could end just discussing if businesses or consumers and patrons and restaurant goers are looking for more information about the safety practices and the requirements for reopening, so they can get a feel of what's happening here locally, what they should be doing, what they should be looking for if they're restaurant goers or patrons. Where can they look? Where can they go?
Well, forwardrva.com is the best place. And I say that because even though the governor's got good information on the state websites, all of our jurisdictions have put the information on theirs. If that's one place that has a little bit of all of it. So if I'm a restaurant owner that maybe has a location in Chesterfield and in one in Richmond, I can go to one place and get the requirements for both. Consumers can also go there. It's not password protected, so anybody can go and see what's available. We intend to keep it as up to date as possible. We also think it'll be a website that'll talk about other information, including small business reopenings and small business assistance that's going to be needed through what's happening with some of our protests and businesses that have been damaged. We may pivot there because small businesses need assistance regardless of what the headwind is. And so whether it be COVID, whether it be that their business has been vandalized, but also even we may be doing some surveys through that website to make sure we're listening, not just we the business community, but that we as society are listening to voices that maybe haven't been heard before. So stay tuned to the forwardrva.com. That may be a portal for much broader things, but it certainly right now has all the COVID related information, all the reopening information. We've pulled from a lot of sources. You can point and click pretty easily to find what you need. And again, that partnership, making sure that we're being consistent with information across a lot of jurisdictions has been very meaningful and helpful. And so I just lift that up. Industry sectors also have it, but this is one site we've tried to make sure it's pretty all comprehensive.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for that. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you joining me in this discussion and for all the work that Forward RBA is doing on behalf of not just the small business owners throughout Central Virginia, but also those who would frequent them and want to, ensure that they know that safe precautions are being taken, and that, how businesses are responding in a really responsible and forward-leaning way. to protect the community and their employees. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for this time and also the work you do and your staff. You know, this is an all hands on deck time if there ever was one. And so the more we can communicate with each other, the more we can make sure information's out there, we'll make sure everybody's in as good a shape as possible and we can help our neighbor.
Thank you. Stay safe, Brian.
You too. Take care, ma'am.